This conference will now be recorded.
In last session, we were discussing about RDS. So what is RDS? How it works, right? What are the advantages with RDS? We discussed. So RDS is a managed database in AWS. So instead of you set up, you manage, and you administrate the database in cloud, that cloud service provider like AWS does us administration, kind of creating database instances and managing the database instances, right, for us. So we discussed all these things theoretically. Let's understand lab. The way you have a EC2 is just a computer, right? Infrastructure as a service. But when it comes to RDS, we have one service called RDS, right? If you see, there is a variety of categories of services we have. If you see database, under database category, you see something called RDS. RDS, relational database as a service, managed relational database as a service. If required, we can create databases in the cloud, and we can manage those databases using RDS. So let me go to that RDS page. The way you have a EC2, we have RDS. So using RDS, we can create a databases. We can create a databases. As of now, I don't have any databases created as of now. I don't have any database instance. As I already told, database instance is nothing but a RDS instance. As of now, I don't have any database instances. Let me create a database instance, that is RDS instance. So let me click on this create RDS. And as I already told, the RDS supports various types of database engines, the database softwares, right? It supports various types of database engines, database softwares. As I already told, right? It supports MySQL, right? It supports MySQL, it supports PostgreSQL, it supports Oracle, it supports MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server. It supports various versions, various engines, database engines, basically database types. You can see you have something called MySQL, you have something called MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server. Aurora is different. Aurora is again internally it's a PostgreSQL or MySQL, but when you go to Aurora, right, you will have lot of other features. Aurora is most it will give better performance when it comes to again RDS. Within RDS, you have MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and MySQL Server. We have something called Aurora, RDS Aurora. So what is this Aurora? Again, it's a database of, it supports basically MySQL or maybe PostgreSQL internally. Aurora is again, it's a RDS instance of MySQL or Postgres. Again, Aurora is internally going to, we can create internally MySQL database or PostgreSQL database instances using Aurora, but it will give lot of performance, better performance if you compare with the normal RDS MySQL with Aurora MySQL. So it will give very good performance, and also we can set up RDS, this Aurora with the multi-region setup also, not only single region. You can replicate your data into multiple regions. If you go with this Aurora, right, it will improve the productivity, performance, and also you can set up your cluster. You can replicate your database cluster into multiple regions, right? So Aurora is a fully managed MySQL and PostgreSQL database that gives a performance and as well as availability. So RDS is also managed service, but when it comes to Aurora also it's a managed service for MySQL or PostgreSQL, but it will give better performance, availability, And also we can replicate Aurora into various regions also, multi-region architecture. Aurora supports multi-region architecture when it comes to normal RDS, right? RDS MySQL, it's a multi-zone within the region, but when it comes to Aurora MySQL or Aurora with Postgres, it is multi-region support is also there. So it supports most of the regions, multi-region setup, and also performance is also very good compared to the normal RDS. So you can create RDS by selecting Aurora also, and it is only compatible. If I select Aurora, it is only compatible internally with either you can use MySQL or PostgreSQL only, but it will give lot of performance again. It supports various you know options, right? Various options in the availability, right? Scalability, all those things. But for now, let me go with normal MySQL instead of Aurora MySQL. So it's a RDS with MySQL, or you can go with MariaDB or PostgreSQL or Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server like that. But Aurora supports only MySQL and PostgreSQL if you go with this Aurora. But advantages with Aurora, there are the performance, the availability of the RDS is very high, performance also very good, scalability, and also you can replicate your data into multiple regions if you go with Aurora. So Aurora is advanced way of provisioning your databases clusters with a lot of performance and scalability. For now, let me go with MySQL only for demonstrating. So I am selecting MySQL. So what type of database software will be configured in the background by this RDS now? If I select this MySQL, what type of database software internally provisioned by the RDS? You have various database softwares. I told, since I am selecting MySQL, it is going to provision MySQL databases, MySQL softwares. And again, what version of the MySQL you want to use for your database? There are various versions of MySQL. So by default, it is 8.0.30 like that. So if required, you can select a old version of MySQL software. If you want to use, you can select this one. Or if you want to use this one, you can select this. Like this is engine version. And again, there are various ways to set up the RDS, right? As I already told, right? Dev and test environment. Dev and test environment, you can go with this option. Dev and test environment, you can go with this option. But if it is a production, if you need high availability, fast and consistent performance, you can go with this template. The template is internally some kind of a configurations. The template is internally some kind of a configurations. If you select production, it will give very high availability, fast and consistent performance. For developmental environment, you can go with like this template, dev and test, right? And a free tier, if you want to practice for free of cost, right? They are giving free tier option. They are giving free tier option. This is only for practicing purpose, not for real usage. So for now, you can take maybe dev or test, or maybe if it is a production environment, you can set up, select production. This is template. And again, availability and durability, you have a deployment option. If I select this option, what does it mean? In the background, it will have a only single database instance with no standby DB instances. Will I get a better availability and durability if I go with this option again, single DB instance? Will I get a more availability and durability? If there is only one DB instance, there is no standby DB instances. If there is no standby DB instances, if something goes wrong with the DB instance, is there any failover will happen? Is there any replication in the database and failover? If I go with this option again, single DB instance, no. So if I go with this multi-agent DB instance, if I go with multi-agent DB instance, what it is saying, it will create a primary DB instance and it is going to create a standby DB instance in a different availability zone. provides high availability and data redundancy, but the standby DB instances is just, it will be in a standby, but there is no connections goes to the standby. If the primary goes down, is that standby will become a primary, is that failover will happen automatically, as I already discussed in the last class. Yes. And you have something called multi-agent DB cluster. Multi-agent DB cluster. So multi-agent DB instance, multi-agent DB cluster. This is again advanced one, new one. If I go with multi-agent DB cluster, it will create a database cluster with a primary DB instance and two readable standby DB instances. Two readable standby DB instances. With each DB instance in a different availability zone, provides high availability, data redundancy, and increase the capacity to serve the workloads also. So this is like some advanced version. So based on your use case, based on your requirement, you can select. I told, right, read replicas. I told read replicas. You can have a read replicas also like this. Read replicas. Your applications can use the RDS endpoint for write, and you need to create a one more URL, that is read replicas, and that read replicas also can be used in your application code for reading the data. It will go to read replicas. For writing the data, it will go to the main database instance. So as for your use case, you can select. For now, if I select this one like this, multi-agent DB instance, it will create a primary DB instance and a standby instance in a different availability zone. Automatically that failover will happen, but there is no read replicas like that. Again, charges are based on your deployment option, guys. Don't think the charges will be remain same whether you go for a single DB instance or this multi-agent DB instance, multi-agent DB cluster like that. If you go, the charges are going to vary based on your deployment option. For now, let me select this multi-agent DB instance like this. And here you need to give some name, identifier name. Let me give some name, maybe just to give an example, let me give MySQL RDS demo, something, some identifier, some name, okay? And if you know the database concept, right, while installing the database, whether you are running locally or whether you are configuring in some server, we are going to set the database usernames and password, root username and root password for protecting. So the root username, the master username for database, let it be admin. I am not changing anything. The master password, I am giving some master password, something like this. Some master password I am giving, something admin @123, something like this, and let me confirm that master password. So I am providing a password for protecting my database. This is the username, and I have typed some password, right? So I have typed some password. So the database instance class, any customer using the multi-agent cluster option in prod environment, it is more expensive. Yes, guys, expensive doesn't matter. Forget about expenses, options, right? If I go with multi-agent cluster, you have read replicas, you have primary, and again two standby with read replicas. Will I have a more availability, durability, performance also if I go with multi-agent cluster? Yes, forget about the charges. What you need is important, right? So if I go with only multi-agent instance, you have only primary and there is a standby. Only standby will be there, but no request will go to standby. If the primary goes down, that standby will becomes a primary. Failover will happen. But if I go with the multi-agent cluster option, you have a primary, you have a standby, two standby with read replicas. So you will get a better performance, availability, durability, all those things. So based on your use case, you can select You will get a better performance, availability, durability, all those things if you go with multi-aged cluster option. Okay. Guys, understand the futures. Charges, the charges doesn't matter if you really need a features, right? You just take, you consider one use case. You guys are purchasing mobile iPhone, right? iPhone is too costly, but still people prefer iPhone, MacBooks, because you have a lot of features and options which you like or which you need basically. So you have to go. They're not going to give for free of cost, right? For all the features, because they're doing something. They're managing in the background more servers for database replications, and again better storage internally they are using with all the options. So that's why. So anyhow, let's come back to this topic. I just created a production template, multi-agent DB instance, and my username and passwords. But this root username and password. Again, instance class. As I already told, instance class. What is this instance class? Database instance class. Instance class determines the computation and memory capacity of your database instances internally. So if I select this type of instance class with this capacity. So in the background, database instances are created and managed by AWS, but what is the CPU and what is the memory of the database instances internally, which is going to be created and managed by that RDS? Here, based on this instance class, if you select this db.m68 large, 2 CPU 8 GB RAM, 2 core CPU 8 GB RAM, and if you select this much for 48 core CPU and 192 GB RAM in a standard class. If I go with the memory optimized, again you have a different classes, right? And burstable, right? You will give more IOPS, all those things. It can burst the CPU. I mean to say, even though you are giving 48 CPU, it can take more CPUs also, that is burstable. So based on your use case, again, you can select the appropriate standard, this DB instance classes. For now, just demo purpose, let me go with as less as possible, this DB instance class, this instance class. And again, internally, the database instances require some storage. What type of storage you need for the database instance? The disk, whether it is a SSD or magnetic, and again general purpose or provisioned IOPS. As we already discussed in AWS EBS sessions, so general purpose, balanced performance, provisioned IOPS, it will give flexibility in IO, input output operations. Which one will give more IOPS? We already discussed all these things. IOPS, what is IOPS? First of all, do you guys remember, recollected? Input output operations per second per GB. Database, do you have a lot of IOPS in the databases? Because your applications will be contacting the database process like MySQL is going to read and write the data from the disk only. It will maintain the data files in the disk, and there is a lot of IOPS. You need to select as per your database load. You can select maybe general purpose, whatever storage you need, or provisioned IOPS, whatever storage I need, like that. So for now, just for demo purpose, I don't want to get 200 GB. Let me take minimum 20 GB here. You can't create a RDS. You can't create a RDS. You can't create RDS with 5 GB, 10 GB like that. Minimum itself is 20 GB. But again, there is the option of storage auto scaling. There is the option of storage auto scaling. I don't need to manually increase the storage if your RDS instances are running out of storage. Storage in the sense disk. If this option is selected, enable storage auto scaling, if this option is selected, even though your RDS is almost reaching, RDS instances are using almost 20 GB, it is reaching 20 GB, will it be automatically increase the disk of that RDS instances in the background? If I select this enable storage auto scaling, yes. So you no need to manually increase the storage capacity for your database instances. If you select this storage auto scaling, it will automatically scale. Again, you can mention the maximum storage threshold. So here by default it is 1000 GB, but if I say 100 like this, if I say 100 like this, if I say 100 like this, even though automatically storage will be increased, the storage of that RDS instances will be increased, but will it be increasing more than 100 GB? Now it is going to be created with 20 GB, but whenever the database is started writing the files to that disk, will it go more than 100 GB even though auto scaling is enabled, storage auto scaling? No. So this is a maximum storage threshold. Maximum storage threshold, you can give up to 65,536 GB. So if I enable this one, even though your disk is getting full, your database instances are writing the database files into some disk. If the disk is getting full, will it be automatically increased if I enable this option? And will it increase up to this much also? Yes. That is what the meaning of enable this storage auto scaling. What is the max value like that? For now, let me give 25 like this. So is everyone clear? This option, very, very important option. Enable storage auto scaling here. Is everyone clear on this option? Or any doubt here? What do you mean by this storage auto scaling? Everyone clear? Or still you have a doubt? What is this storage auto scaling? Now, let me select so that it will automatically increase the disk. Now, most importantly, connectivity. Most importantly, connectivity. So, when I select the connectivity, so who can contact this RDS? Who can contact this RDS? Who can contact this RDS, right? So you have some options here. You need to select the VPC, under which VPC you want to create that RDS, and you have some option. So connect an EC2 instance to this RDS. You can select whatever servers. You can select these servers like that. Automatically firewall will be opened. If I select like this, automatically firewall will be opened for these instances. Otherwise, later also I can do. Later also I can do. I will connect this database from other database, the EC2 instances later, where I am going to deploy that application. So I can select this later also. You can leave this option, select this, don't connect also, fine. Now, most importantly, VPC, guys. So if you select the default VPC and the subnets which are there in a default VPC, the subnets which are there in a default VPC, is your RDS will be having a public IP with internet access like that. If I select public access again, if I select default VPC, default subnet, if you understand VPC concept, this RDS instances internally will be created in a VPC only. But if I select default VPC with internet access, this public access as a yes, RDS instances will have a public IP. So is RDS can be connected from public internet also, which means your servers, your applications are hosted in some VPC. If your applications are hosted in some VPC, and your RDS is created in a separate VPC, but that has a public subnets with public access, then you can contact these RDS instances from anywhere. But it is not safe in real time. This is not safe in real time. This is not safe in real time, but you already know the VPC concept. If required, Can you create your own VPC, custom VPC with the private subnets? And can I select those private subnets so that if the application servers are in a same VPC, then only it will work. Otherwise, you need to create a VPC pairing all those things. Guys, I hope you can relate this with the networking concept. We already discussed VPC, right? Public subnets, private subnets. VPC. In AWS, we discussed about VPC concept, right? VPC is all about networking. So VPC has a concept of subnets. VPC has a concept of subnets. Let's say you created some VPC like this. You created some VPC like this. And you have some public subnets, you have some private subnets. You have some public subnets, you have some private subnets, right? You can select so let's say if it is a default VPC, all the subnets you have in the default VPC, all the subnets in the default VPC is a public subnet. But that is not safe in real time, especially in real time. So you have a private subnets like this, you have a public subnets like this. So when I create a RDS also, I need to select a subnets. I need to select a subnets. So if I select my own VPC here, instead of default VPC, if I select some custom VPC like this, and again, here I can select the subnets. I can select the subnets. So choose the subnet under which you want to create. So here you have an option to choose the subnets also. You have an option to choose the subnets also and create a new DB subnet like this. And this access, private access, you need to select. If you select a private access, is it going to assign public IP for that RDS instances? No. If there is no public IP, if there is no public IP, if there is no public IP for your RDS instances, your RDS instances will be created in a private subnets. Your RDS instances will be created in a private subnet. So your RDS instances will be created in a private subnet. This is like master and standby like that it will create. So does these RDS instances will be reachable from a different VPC unless until there is a VPC pairing, or can we reach from public internet like this? If I have some databases like this, no, it won't reachable. And again, security group is there. We already discussed, right? Again, there is a firewall for this RDS. You need to open that firewall also, but if it is created in a public subnet, you can reach from internet also. But even though it is open, you opened a firewall for all the sources, but if it is created in a private subnets, it won't work. Understand the VPC concept here. So for now, I am just demonstrating public access because I am not deploying any application. Just I will show with my local laptop also. I can connect to this RDS instance. That's why I'm selecting it, and that's why I'm selecting a default VPC with the default subnets, right? Public access. But in real time, it is not a public access, private access like this, and again private subnets you are going to choose. Now, security group. Again, security group is important. Security group is important. The security group where you need to open the port, RDS ports, the database ports basically. Since I am using MySQL database engine, MySQL will run on which port? We already discussed. I will select public access. So MySQL will run on which port? MySQL port. If you guys are already working, right, you should know all these things. Each and every software will run on some port. So MySQL will run on 3306. 3306. So if that port is not opened in the security group which is attached with this RDS, then does your applications will be able to reach this database if the database port is not open for that sources, whatever source where your application is hosted? No. So by default it is using the default security group. By default it is using the default security group in that VPC. Even though I don't specify, right? It is using the default security group in that VPC. If required, you can create a new security group and where you can open the port. So if required, you can create a new security group, or maybe the default security group it is selecting. Otherwise, you can select existing security group like this. But in this group, security group, you need to open the ports. Otherwise, you can create a new security group also like this. You can create a new security group also like this. Let me give some security group name, something like this. Some name, something like this. Some name, security group. The security group will be created, but later you need to open the port. Now, with all these configurations, I am creating a database. Now, password based authentication. So any applications want to connect to the database, I am just going with the password. Here I am setting the password, right? Here I am setting the password, but let me set the password, invalid password. So here again you have some rules. So you should not give password like this. Again, specifying a string that defines the password for the master user. Master password should be at least 8 characters long. You need to set some password at least 8 characters long. So let me set my password something like this. Something I am typing. I will reveal this later. And master password, confirm password should match same. So again, here you have some the characters, right? You should not have slashes like this, quotes like this, and at the rate symbol in your password. You should not have these symbols again, that it will say invalid password. So I am just saying some password other than whatever they are saying. So 8 characters length, more than 8 characters, and I am setting some password for the database, and that username and password is required for your applications to connect. Now, as per these options, whatever I have selected, right? What they are saying, approximately how much charge they are going to charge for me, monthly charges for this RDS. Also, they are giving. So how many dollars? $357 per month. $357 per month. They are giving estimated monthly cost. As per this MySQL database, with this MySQL version, multi-agent instance option, with this instance class, right? With this much minimum storage, right? With this, it is taking, which is going to charge this much. So for now, I am creating a default VPC only. With public access, but in real time, it is not like that. For now, I will try to connect the database from some software from my local laptop. That's why I'm selecting like this. So let me create a database. In the background, who is going to create a database instances and who is going to create a database instances and who is going to install that MySQL software and who is going to set up that master, that is primary and secondary standby replica. Who is going to do all these things, creating a primary, secondary, and that replication, We discussed already all these things theoretically, guys. We discussed all these things theoretically, right? Who is going to manage the required hardware and the OS installation, OS patching, database software installation, database patching, backups, availability, scaling, all these things will be taken care by AWS. So in the background, who is going to manage the primary, secondary? Because I have gone with the multi-agent instance. Multi-agent instance I have selected. So there is a primary, there is a secondary, that standby. Basically, that is everything will be taken care by AWS. So this we already discussed in the last class. So if you see in the background, it is managing everything. It is managing everything. The database instance is getting created. Your database instances are getting created. It will take some time. It will take some time. It is still in progress. But once this RDS is ready, it will give an endpoint. Let me select this. Let me select this. After this is provisioned, it will give some endpoint. It will give some endpoint. Endpoint in the sense URL. If you see in the background, do they have a replica also? Replication, all those things? Yes. So let's wait for some time. Let's wait for some time. It is still provisioning. Let's wait for some time. After that, we will check all this whatever has been happening here. So it is still getting provisioned. So let's wait for some time. We'll come back to this page after 1 or 2 minutes. So restore from S3, how it works? Basically, it's a backup. Suppose if you have a backups in S3 bucket, right? Your RDS instances can be created from the backup. So that the data also will be taken as a backup. So you already have a data. That data you are maintaining, your RDS backups. Your RDS backups you are maintaining in S3. If required, you can create RDS instances with the data from that backup. Now I am creating a direct RDS. Is it restoring or is it creating with any data? No, it's just a database. Then your applications can connect to the database and insert the data. Let's wait for some time. It is taking some time. Let's wait. It is taking some time. Let's wait for that. Now let me select this. Let me select this. Now it has given endpoint. If you see, it has given endpoint. So this is my endpoint. This is my endpoint. Endpoint is like a domain name. Internally it is resolving to some IP. since I have selected a default VPC with public access, so is it going to result to the public IP of the RDS instances in the background? This endpoint, yes. And internally it has created some security group. In this security group, if this is not opened, that port, even though it's a database instances are created in the background, does your applications will be able to reach the database for whatever sources you have not opened? So by default, it has opened for this source. It has opened for this source. So this IP, if the application is hosted in this system, if that application is contacting RDS, then only it will allow. If the applications are hosted in a different systems and it is contacting that RDS, do you think this firewall which is attached to that RDS will allow you for your applications to reach the database? No. So if required, do you need to modify these inbound rules as per your requirement? Which means from which sources you want to reach this database, RDS, basically. Yes. So you can open for whatever sources you want to open. That can be your own VPC. That can be your own VPC like that. For now, it is open for this source. So if required, you can open for only your VPC range, any network range like that. Now I just created RDS. In the background, did I created any EC2 instance? Did I install MySQL software like that? Did I configure MySQL? Did I set up that replication? All those things? No. So who has done all these things? When I create RDS instances, AWS has done all these things. Now, if you know the applications, right? Applications can contact this database. Applications can contact this database. As of now, I have one database instance, that is MySQL instance. In the background, there is a replication, primary, secondary, all these things is there in the background. If you see, there is a security group used here. There is a replication in the sense the secondary DB, all those concepts are there. For now, let me select maybe let me show some sample application. Anyone from development background, I think you might have already know there is some softwares to connect the databases also, like MySQL Workbench, You can use MySQL Workbench also to connect to the databases. MySQL Workbench is one software, one GUI. Using that MySQL Workbench also, you can connect to the database to see the tables, records, all those things. If required, you can install that MySQL Workbench also. But it's not an application. It is one software which you can install, kind of a GUI to connect to the database. Kind of a GUI to the connect to the database. Kind of a GUI to the connect to the database. Kind of a GUI to the connect to the database. So you can install this workbench and you can connect to the database also. Is there any automated options for taking the backups? You can see here, right? There is all the options are there, guys. I'm not explaining all these options because I want to limit the scope of this course to only at high level, because I'm not discussing RDS, all the features, all those things. Everything is there. Everything is there. Otherwise, there is of no use, right? Maintenance and backups. Right? So you can take a backup, automated backups. They have given some options already. Automated backups. This time the backups will be automatically taken, and if required, you can customize all these things. Automated backups is already enabled. So who is going to take these backups again automatically? AWS only. Everything is there here. You need to configure also if required. If required, you can manually take a snapshot. Now in the background, who is going to take the the snapshot of the database RDS instances. Again, if I click on this, again AWS only. This is kind of a manual snapshot. This is like an automated snapshot. Everything is there. That's why RDS is preferred. That's why RDS is preferred. Clear, Arvind? Again. Now, let me show just for connecting. Guys, I strongly recommend you to attend AWS full course. If you need more details about AWS services, kindly limit the questions only related here, because I don't want to drag this training like months, because my focus is Terraform. If you guys need complete AWS with in detail, attend AWS architect level course. Okay, I already told in the beginning only. This is my main agenda is not AWS. My main agenda is Terraform. But I am explaining some additional services so that at least you can have an understanding of what is these services. Because if I try to explain each and every option by option, it will take months, because here my focus is Terraform, not AWS. Okay. So now let me use some kind of a workbench, this MySQL workbench. This is one software. MySQL workbench. Using this workbench, you can connect to the database also. MySQL workbench. Or maybe instead of using workbench, maybe let me show the application only directly. So I have some Java based application already. This application will talk to the database. Maybe let me directly show the application only. I have a Java based application developed, and this Java based application will internally talk to the database. So there is a code here, some APIs, and it will internally talk to the database. You already know. Here I am going to provide the database details. But instead of I provide like this, can I provide my RDS endpoint here instead of localhost and that IP address like that? That is one application. So for application, I am passing my database details. So let me talk to the database via application only instead of using that workbench or whatever it is. So let me take this endpoint. This is my RDS endpoint. So I can give something like this, my RDS endpoint, URL. I will give here in my Java code. I can give that RDS endpoint. And again, the username, whatever username you guys created, for that RDS, right? So RDS username and password, whatever you guys created, you can give that username and password here. Instead of local host and instead of local that port number, you can give your RDS instance, something like this, your RDS URL. You can give something like this, JDBC MySQL, and your RDS URL, this URL. If you are a Java developer, you can understand what do you mean by this. You are giving something like this, and on which port RDS will run. On which port that RDS is running, you already know. MySQL I was using. What is the port? 3306. And some kind of a schema name, database name. Let's say demo app like this. So this is your database URL. If you guys are from a development background, you can understand what is this. And my username, I have given username is what? Admin only. I have set some password, something like this, Mithun Tech 123 hash. So this is my code. This is a Java code. This is a Java code where I have modified my Java code properties. Internally, this Java code, this Java has a code, this project has a code. Internally, it is going to talk to the database. There is a code. So if you see, there are some APIs. There are some APIs internally developed in the Java only. This is code, nothing to do with RDS or anything. There is a code. Internally, it is going to contact the database only. Internally, it is going to contact database only. There is all the code, database related code you have here, the Java code. So let me just build this application and let me deploy this application. Let me build this application. Let me deploy this application. It's a Java-based Spring Boot application. It's a Java-based Spring Boot application. It is nothing to do with the database. You are building one application, and that application is contacting database. But here, am I managing the database? Here, am I managing the database here? No. Who created and who is managing the database? AWS. AWS is managing the database. Now, this is my application. So since I have selected public subnets, I mean to say default VPC with the public subnets and that public connectivity type, even though I am running my application locally as a developer, as a Java developer, even though I am running my application locally, is my application running locally? Will it able to reach this endpoint? Will it able to reach this endpoint, that RDS endpoint? Basically, application is running locally in my local laptop, but still, is it going to, will it be able to talk to the database even though I run my application locally? Because of the options we selected, that RDS options, will it able to reach this one? Yes, because we selected default VPC with access as a public, right? So even though my application is running in local laptop, I have selected a default VPC with access as a public, right? So this is my local laptop. This is my MacBook. I am a developer. Let's say I am a developer, and I am running my application locally just for development purpose. I am running that application locally. That application locally I am running. Application is running locally, but the database is in cloud, like RDS. But I selected default VPC with public access. So is the application will be able to talk to the RDS? Will it able to talk to the RDS, because which is selected with public internet access option? So will it able to talk to this RDS endpoint? Application running locally here, will it able to talk to the RDS using that endpoint? Yes. Yes, you know the networking concept. Let me show that simply. You no need to deploy any application. Let me open my local laptop command prompt or terminal. If I do a simple curl also, you can understand. I am doing a curl or telnet basically. I am doing a curl with the telnet. This is my local laptop only. Telnet on this endpoint on 3306. On 3306. Do you see? Is there a connectivity from my local laptop to that RDS endpoint on that port? Because it's a public option you selected. Now if I run my application, is that application will be able to talk to this RDS URL on that port? Basically, is my application running locally in my local laptop also, will it able to talk to the database, that is RDS? Yes. But if you, as I already told, if it is private, you guys selected custom VPC and you have selected access type as no, public access as no. In that case, there is no public IP for that RDS and it will be created in a private subnets like that. Then the application running in your local laptop, will it able to talk to that RDS URL, RDS endpoint if it is a private access? No. This is networking concept. It is nothing to do with RDS. It is nothing to do with RDS. We discussed in the VPC, right? So for now it is public access. That's why it is able to talk. Now let me build this application. I'm building this application. I have an application locally in my local laptop. I have my application locally in local laptop. So I have one application. Internally, it's a Java-based application. In that code, I have updated my database URLs. In the code, I have updated my database URLs in that application.property file. In that application.property file, 1 second. In that application.property file, I have made some changes. Let me make simple for you. Since I know the development concept, let me make the changes simple for you. Forget about all these profiles, Maven profiles concept. Forget about all these things. I have just everything kept in the application.property file. Spring Boot will use this property file to talk to the database. So let me build the application Maven. Let me go to that folder where I have a code. This is a Java based code. There is a form.xml. In my local laptop only I am building, guys. In my local laptop only I am building. So let me execute mvn clean package. mvn clean package. So I am building my application. I am running locally, but can I deploy this application into any AWS EC2 instance also if required? That can be in a same VPC wherever you have your RDS also. If it is a private connection, you can deploy this application in a EC2 instance in a same VPC where you have your RDS. Or you can run this application also as a container. It's up to you. For now, I am just building that application locally and I am just running that application locally. But as we already discussed in the DevOps classes, right? Can I build this application and deploy this application directly in a virtualized deployment in EC2 instances? That EC2 instance can be in a same VPC where you have your RDS created, yes. If required, can you build and deploy this application as a container also if required? Can we run this application as a container in a Docker Swarm cluster or Kubernetes cluster also if required? Yes. For now, I am just still building locally, but you know the concepts already. For now, let me build this application and let me deploy this application and I'll access those APIs. That APIs is internally going to access it, internally going to contact to the database. Internally it is going to contact to the database. Okay. So let's wait for this concept. I hope you guys are already familiar with the Java based applications. What is Maven, all those things. This is DevOps tools. In the meantime, let me explain which is something related to Terraform. Again, I will create a RDS in the way I have created manually using console. We will create that using Terraform also. I will explain that later in detail. But if required, can I create the way I have created RDS manually using Terraform also? Can we create? Yes. If you know the concepts, it becomes easy. So that's why we're discussing. If you see in the Terraform registry, in the Terraform, you have a AWS provider, AWS provider, right, in the Terraform, and that provider has the RDS resource also. That provider has the RDS resource also. So if you see here, RDS resource also is there. So AWS RDS resource also there. So using these resource, right, you can create a database instance. The way I have manually created RDS instance, right, I can say something like this. I can say something like this. So if you guys remember, while I am manually creating, did I selected what engine, whether it's a MySQL engine, whether it's a PostgreSQL engine, whether it's a MySQL server, Microsoft like that? Yes. So if I run like this, just to give an example, is it going to create a RDS instance of MySQL with this version, this as an instance class, this much as a default storage, like that? If I run Terraform script like this, yes. So if you know the concepts, like what do you mean by DB, RDS, what do you mean by RDS, what do you mean by engine, what do you mean by instance class, if you know all these things, you can create a databases also using Terraform. Instead of manually creating RDS, you can automate using Terraform also. I will show that when I go for a Terraform. But without knowing all these options, you can't understand what do you mean by max allocated storage, allocated storage. We discussed just now all these things, right? When I manually created RDS, did I explain what do you mean by that allocated storage, max allocated storage? Max allocated storage is when we enable auto scaling, storage auto scaling. Can it scale up to 100 GB like this if I create in my RDS Terraform script? So did I manually provided my root username and root password when I created RDS using GUI? Yes. That options you can provide in the Terraform, something like this. Username, password, right? DB name, DB engine, DB version, like this. There are a lot of other options. They have given all the details here itself. So based on your use case, you can provision the RDS also using Terraform script like this. RDS from the Terraform script like this. So someone was asking, sir, how to restore database instance from S3? Suppose you have a data in S3, that S3 bucket you have a backup. So if you create something like this, S3 import option is RDS will be imported, RDS database instance will be created with the help of S3, where you have a backup of that RDS instances like this also is. So Terraform is just a code to provision that infrastructure automatically. But without knowing what is RDS, what do you mean by what here, it will be a problem. Okay? Anyhow, I will explain this. I will create RDS like this using Terraform when I actually start the Terraform also. Okay? Now I am just creating manually. But if required, RDS also can be created using Terraform. I will show that the script, Terraform script, to provision the RDS via Terraform. Okay, so let's come back to this. If my application is built, but is it anything to do with the Terraform or AWS? What I am doing now? I have a Java-based application. I am building that application. I am deploying that application. Is it anything related to Terraform or AWS? No. This is applications that can connect to the databases. Yes, it is taking so much time because it is downloading all the Maven dependencies. If you know Maven concept, you can understand all these things. Maven has a concept of central repository, local repository, right? Maven dependencies. Form.xml has a Maven dependencies, that Java application dependencies. There is no dependencies available locally in my local laptop. That's why it is trying to download from the central repository. and it is taking some time. So let's wait for that to complete. Not sure how much time it will take. Let's wait for some time because it is still that application package we are creating. If I deploy this application is internally going to contact that the database, that RDS instance, which is created and managed by AWS, because I have given those details to my application. I will be on mute for some time because it is still downloading lot of dependencies for that application to build. Wait for some time. Here I am just taking Java as an example, but if required, does a Python, like if you know, if you are a Python developer, can you develop one application in Python also? That Python applications, basically that application, that APIs can talk to the database of that RDS also if required. Yes. If you are a Node.js developer, can you use this RDS from your Node.js code, Node.js applications, Node.js APIs also? Will it able to talk to this RDS if you provide that RDS details to your Node.js application code? Yes. So I'm just taking one application as a reference here. Applications will internally talk to the database. The database, instead of I manage, I set up, AWS is managing for us. That is RDS. Not sure how much time it is still going to take because it's very slow, my network speed today. Okay, anyhow, let's wait. I don't have any other option because we created RDS. I wanted to show something that we can connect to the RDS via application and that RDS will maintain the data. So let's wait. should have done this one with good internet speed. It is taking a lot of time. My internet speed is very less and it is struggling to download so many Maven dependencies from Maven central repositories. Let's see. Meantime, let me show via MySQL Workbench also. I thought I can show from that application, but let me show you some GUI. This is kind of a database GUI. You can use some software called Workbench. This is kind of a GUI to connect to the database and see the tables, records, all those things. So I am downloading that MySQL Workbench for Mac OS because I am using Mac. Otherwise, if you guys are using Windows laptops or desktop, you can download like this. But I am using a Mac, so I am downloading this Workbench for Mac. Let me install this Workbench. From Workbench also I can connect to the database. I don't want to log in, just download that Workbench software. Because this application option is taking so much time. It is downloading a lot of softwares, but it is taking a lot of time to download all the Maven dependencies. So let me connect via this Workbench. I will install this Workbench. I'll install this Workbench. I'm installing Workbench in my local laptop. So now I have this Workbench installed in my local laptop. So let me open that Workbench to connect to the just database. Guys, whether you are using RDS, whether you are using normal MySQL lab server in your local laptop or anywhere also, you can use this Workbench. If you are a developer or database admin, you might have already used this Workbench. Anyone already familiar with this software MySQL Workbench? Anyone used any development background, any admin background? If you have, anyone use this Workbench as of now? No. Okay, anyhow, let me show that. So let me create a connection. I'm going to create a database connection, right? I'm going to create a connection. Let me close this. Let me go to home. Let me go to database. Let me click on this connect database. This is kind of a GUI. This is kind of a GUI to talk to the database. DBS will use, right? Developers will use this one just to see the tables, records, all those things. Now let me give a connection, right? New connection. I'm going to give host name instead of using local host. I'm going to use this RDS endpoint, this RDS URL, like this. You already know port 3306. Here I have given RDS URL. Now the root username. What is the root username? Admin. What is the root username? Admin. So let me click on OK, and it will ask password. the root password. I have set the password like Mithun Tech 123. So let me click on OK. Let me click on OK. Now it is not able to connect to the database. One second. Let me see if my password is given correctly. Let me go to database, connect database. Let me use this one. Username is admin, right? Let me see. Let me click on OK, admin. This is the host name, that is the port. And let me give the password. The password which I have given here is mithuntech123 hash. That is my password when I created a database. So let me click on OK. Let's wait for some time. Now you can see it is connected to the database. It is connected to the database. As of now, there is no tables. This is kind of a command where you can execute some kind of a database queries also. This is some kind of a command where you can execute database queries. As of now, there is no tables. This is a brand new database. There is no schema, there is no tables like that. If required, you can use this MySQL workbench also to create a tables, select the tables like this. So there are no tables as of now. There is no schemas as of now. That's why you don't see any option here. But like this, if I use this type of usernames and password in my code also, application can connect to the database and it can create a tables and it can create a records also. But it is taking a lot of time today. So anyhow, I will demonstrate this application way of connecting. I will run this application tomorrow and I will show that. I will deploy some application. That application will internally talk to the database where it is going to maintain the data. But before I wrap up the session, is everyone clear what is RDS? First of all, RDS, how to create RDS? Any questions on the RDS basically? So try to create RDS, and you can use this workbench, just a GUI, one software to connect to the database. So I connected to the RDS using this MySQL workbench. But tomorrow I will show this application. I'm still, this building application is taking lot of time. So it's already 6:25. So I'll build this same application, whatever I'm demonstrating today. I will deploy that application and we will see how application is internally going to talk to the database. Okay. So tomorrow for the first 10 minutes, I will deploy this application and we will see how it works. And later we will discuss about some other database, the other AWS concept called DynamoDB. So RDS is a relational database. RDS is a relational database, RDBMS. So you can create MySQL databases, or you can create PostgreSQL, you can create Microsoft SQL Server. These are the instance, basically these are the DB engines. It is supporting Microsoft SQL Server, or it is supporting MariaDB. But suppose if I need a NoSQL databases, NoSQL databases, that is document-oriented database, there is one service for that one also, that is DynamoDB. So tomorrow, after deploying this application and testing this application, I will explain DynamoDB also. That's it for today, guys. I'll continue tomorrow because it is not able, it is application building is taking time. We'll continue tomorrow, but today assignment, what I want you to do is create RDS database, and from your local laptop, install MySQL workbench, just connect like this. But there is no tables, there is no schemas created here. Just connect like this. Clear what needs to be done today so that we can continue tomorrow? I want you to create a RDS instance. Let it be public. Let it be public. Let it be in a default VPC. But you know already the networking concepts, right? Private subnets, private custom VPC. For now, let it be default VPC. Let it be public access and install MySQL Workbench and connect. From here, I'll continue tomorrow. It is taking hell lot of time. Let it be. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.